Hello and welcome to my Wednesday workshop where we'll be painting this adorable cat. This is my first cat workshop, which is really exciting. This is a photo I got on Unsplash by Sydney Torturo. So Unsplash is a great copyright-free reference for, resource for reference photos. So we are going to paint this cutie. Hopefully you're good to go. You've got your outline done. Everything's traced out. This one was super simple. Not a lot of little details. Really, the only details that we will have are in the eyes. And this one is so much fun. There is a certain key to painting white fur. I always say white fur is very rarely white. Because you have shadowing and things like that. So we'll get into that soon. But for now, I just want to welcome you to the workshop. And we'll go ahead and get started. So I have planned ahead and I've chosen a few colors. Now, I'm going to have different colors than you're going to have. And so I will tell you a replacement for whatever colors that I'm using today. I will try to give you a replacement that will work for you with the colors that you have. Okay, so I'm going to get a little more comfortable and sit down. I've just got a couple of brushes today. I really like these silver black velvet brushes because of how soft they are. The softness makes me be more gentle. When I have a really stiff brush, I tend to be a little bit more controlling, and I'm trying to let go of control. That is the whole point to my practice, is working on letting go of control. So my husband will tell you that that has been an issue for me in my life, feeling the need to control things so that I can feel safe. And so watercolor is something that has allowed me to learn to let go. So this is just my practice run. It did take me about an hour, but with all the talking I'm going to be doing, it might take us 2 hours or more. So we're going to get this done. We're not in a rush, you know? Painting is for the joy of the journey, right? So we're going to need some different colors that are earth tones. So burnt umber, burnt sienna, and a yellow ochre type color. And we'll mix the burnt sienna and the yellow ochre type color to get something like this. This is raw sienna. And I don't have this color on my Daniel Smith dot card, but I do have it in stick form, and I am loving this color. It is a new one for me. So my dot card has transparent yellow oxide as my yellow ochre, and then transparent red oxide as my burnt sienna, and then I do have burnt umber on here. So we'll be using a few of these colors today, and I will try to name a replacement color for you so that you can use what you have at home. Color is not going to matter as much as getting our values right. So our values, what does that mean? That's our lights, our darks, and then the kind of in-betweens. So for example, we've got some really darks up here on the head. There's some darks within the eye here, all these blacks. Those are our dark values. And then shadows are usually midtones. So all the shadows on the chest here are midtones. And let's look at this. One way to know your values is, and I gave you a black and white version of this, when you turn something black and white, you're getting rid of the distraction of color. Color can be so distracting, right? So we get rid of the distraction of color, and now we can easily see the depth that we need to achieve. So grab some brushes. You'll want a really big one for doing like the fur and that kind of stuff. And then you want something small to do like the eye details and whatnot. So I've got a couple here. This is just an inexpensive Hobby Lobby brush. It's like a 20/0 liner. This is actually really small. You even could get away with a size 2 silver black velvet or something similar. Begin the recording. And I'm so glad you made it. I'll try to do this within the time. I only have about an hour and 20 minutes left, but let's go ahead and get started. So I will try to give you a replacement color for all of the colors I'll be using today. I will be using mostly colors from my Daniel Smith dot card, which some of you may have, some of you may not. And so let's go ahead and get started. So I planned ahead. I did a preliminary painting of this cutie, and we need to name this cat because all the pets that I paint need a name. So I feel like it's a girl. I don't know. Cats are more like girls to me. So I'll try to come up with a name. If you come up with one, drop it in the chat. I would love to hear it. So let me turn on the chat. Great. Okay, so we're going to need a few colors today. So basically, you'll need a yellow ochre type color. I will be using raw sienna, but you can mix yellow ochre and like burnt sienna to achieve. So this is yellow ochre and burnt sienna mixed together right here. And that is raw sienna. See how close they look? So I am using raw sienna, and that's going to be for the kind of redhead tones that we've got on this cutie. Okay. So then you'll need a burnt umber. You will need yellow. So I'm using nickel azo yellow and ultramarine blue. I'm using a mixture of that to create our beautiful green eyes. And then we'll be using hematite genuine. And now hematite genuine, I can't really think of a replacement for, because what hematite genuine does is it gives us this amazing granulation that you can see right here. It's like this chunky granulation, and mixed with other colors gives you this, and it looks like fur. That's how we achieve the idea of fur. So this is burnt umber, hematite genuine mixed together. And fun fact, hematite genuine is actually magnetic, which is really fun. So that's what this is. So hematite genuine mixed with like burnt umber will give you all of this fur texture that we have going on there. So I'm just going to set this to the side. I always do a plan before I start. I always do a plan. So this is my planning sketchbook. It just really helps me to kind of map out what I'm going to do. So here I've got my shadow colors for the white part of the fur. And I've just planned like the eyes out and everything like that. So, all right. First things first, I'm going to lighten my sketch up just a little bit. I am using a pretty big sheet of paper. So I am using Fabriano Artistico cold press today. And it is a quarter sheet. So that is 11 by 15 inches. So it's pretty big. And the reason that I like painting so large is I love eyes, and I really love the detail, or the details that you can achieve when it's bigger. So when it's bigger, you can get a little bit more. So this one is tiny. This is about half the size. This would be 7 by 11, and then this is 11 by 15, if that makes sense. So I'm going to use my kneaded eraser. And like I said before, this is being recorded and will be uploaded to YouTube, and you will get a private link to that. So if you've missed something, don't you worry. And if you if your connection breaks off or you're just having a hard time keeping up, that is a-okay, because you will have access to the recording. And I never really take the recordings down. Once I put it on YouTube on a private link, it just kind of stays there. So you will have access to this class indefinitely. Unless my YouTube channel disappears or something. But I don't think that's going to happen. So all I'm doing is lightening my graphite. I don't want to lose my lines, but I also don't. This is a light colored cat, and I really don't want all this graphite showing through. So I'm not so much worried about all this stuff. The eyes I don't want to have disappear. But I also want you guys to be able to see. You're welcome to unmute and say hi, or if that's not something you're comfortable with, fine by me. So, today we only have one person who wanted to paint cats with me, and I'm just so happy that somebody wanted to paint a cat today. I have literally only painted dogs in my workshops, and so I was a little nervous doing a cat, thinking like, I don't know if anybody's gonna want to paint a cat, but here we are. And oh my gosh, you cannot say no to painting a cat eye. Cat eyes are amazing. On that note, let's go ahead and get started. So I always start with the eyes. I always. I have so many YouTube videos about why I start with the eyes. It's just what I do. I have to start with the eyes. They anchor me to the painting. They help me commit to finishing. So let's look at these eyes I am so excited about. Okay, so the eyes they're green right here, but we've got a lot of gold around the edges. So the way to achieve gold is by adding green to yellow, and that actually gives you gold. Now, like I said, I'm using my dot card today, and there is 0 green on my dot card, so we're going to make green. And we can use quinacridone gold, or we can use nickel azo yellow. If you have lemon yellow, if you have quinacridone deep gold, any kind of yellow is fine. I really love quin gold for eyes because eyes are literally reflecting light. And quinacridone gold is almost like liquid light. So we're going to go ahead and put I'm going to use quinacridone gold. I am going to grab a size 8 brush. I'm going to get it wet. And I've got these little trays here that I've been mixing in, and this is what I used for green before. So this is nickel azo yellow and ultramarine blue, but I am actually going to put a layer of quin gold on that eye first. Perfect. So what I'm doing right now is eyes reflect light, and to me, quinacridone gold is like liquid light. And while these eyes are greenish right here, they really do have a gold tone going on. So what I'm going to do is create a wet and wet situation where I'm actually just putting quinacridone gold down. Kind of dry, wet on dry. And then while that's wet, I'll drop in some ultramarine blue, and that will mix and mingle and create green. So it's going to be really pretty. The key with eyes for me is a gentle touch, because you want the watercolors to do their magic where they settle into the paper's texture and they just mix and mingle, and I want that with the eyes. So I'm just going to be so gentle. And you know what? Sometimes I accidentally cover up my highlight, and that's okay. I actually used to use masking fluid, but I really don't anymore. It just has become kind of an annoyance for me. And so I cheat. I don't think it's cheating. Art is art, but I end up using this if I need to add any highlights back. This product is a water-based product. It's like a really thick paste, and you mix water with it and it creates a beautiful opaque white. So that is a fun one to have. You can use titanium white, watercolor. It's just not as opaque. So I'll talk about that when we get to it. I am trying to preserve the white of the paper though. Please feel free to ask me questions as we go and interrupt me, because I do talk a lot. I figure it's my job. But interrupt me if you need. Okay, so now I've created a wet surface with that quin gold, and it looks really yellow. But once I start adding, this is my little mixing pot. It looks like pickle juice. This is literally nickel azo yellow and ultramarine blue that I had in here. So I am just gonna take this ultramarine, and where there's green, I'm going to drop it in. And I say drop it in, I just mean barely touch your brush to it. That's what gives us just these gorgeous, look at that. It's like a whole world inside of the eye. And so we want to create that. And then I'll clean my brush and dab off the excess water and just maybe manipulate gently the paint. And I'm avoiding the pupil. I don't need to. I just don't want to lose where it is. And we'll just start adding, mix that. Now I've got kind of a green. Oops, I'm going to move this because I'm going to keep bumping it. And then we'll zoom on in. There we go. I really don't need to be wearing these glasses. These are blue light blockers, and I'm not staring at my screen right now. Yeah, if you need to, whenever you need to leave, feel free. It's kind of weird only having one person, though. I'll tell you. Don't need anybody to moderate the chat today. I have a lot of dog people in my, you know, my followers, my subscribers. I got a lot of dog people. I'm a dog person, but I have cats too, so I have both. It's just funny how people get, it's almost like a political thing sometimes. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I've got like, this is, it's kind of a mixture right now of like a burnt sienna. And so in order for me to get some more olive tones going on here, anytime you've got green and you want to make it olive, you add red. So I want an earthy green for the edges. I'm going to start dabbing in. Look at that. How pretty is that? Just adding in a little like burnt sienna type color. And really, color, I say this a lot, color matters, color harmony matters, temperature matters. But at the end of the day, if you don't get your values right, all of that, your painting will just fall flat anyway and the colors won't matter. So I always tell people, try to get your values right first, where your darks are, where your lights are, and get your contrast right. And then color is secondary to that. I mean, we've all seen monochromatic paintings before. We know that you can create something really beautiful with one color as long as you get the values right. Okay, so something really important to me, I could keep trying to add more, but at some point it starts to become a mess. And so what I want to do is I want to dry it now. We will be layering because I don't want to go too far and make a muddy mess. So now I'm just layering a little more green. So what I do, I'm looking at my reference. Let me pop the reference up on the screen too, because it's really, really helpful for you to see what I'm looking at. Desktop reference. There we go. This cat is so cute. I actually have, I do have a cat that looks very similar.
I had one too, Bella.
Oh, I love it.
Almost exactly like that.
Oh my gosh. These babies are so precious. But what I like to do is squint. I like blur my eyes, unfocus my eyes. I squint at my reference. And what that does is it just really helps me to stop worrying about the little details and get the big picture. Where are my darks at? So that helps me when I squint at it. I'm like, oh, this all needs to be darker. It doesn't need to be, I don't need to fuss. So the edges are always darker. That's what creates that beautiful depth where you know, oh, that eye is round because the edges are darker. So once we start doing that, and then we'll darken, add more green here. Eyes are so incredible. I could just sit and paint eyes all day. And I'm just dabbing right now, and I'll take a second and kind of, I'm going to grab a different brush and just use, it's clean, it's damp, it's not dripping, but it's you know, it's damp. And I'm just going to use the tip of it to just smudge around the stuff I just put down. I like to blend, anytime I put paint on dry paper, I'm going to mess it back up. I'll even use my finger. Just mess it up, make sure to mess it up. That's how I achieve the look of more looseness is, yeah, I have control and precision, But as soon as I put it down, I'm going to mess it up. And you'll see as we get to the fur. The fur is my favorite thing to mess up. I'm trying to avoid those highlights. Okay, now down here we're in shadow. And for that, I love neutral tint. Let me grab my other little pot. Let me clean some of that out. Now, neutral tint is a mixture of 3 colors, I believe. So we've got lamp black, quinacridone violet, and phthalo blue, which is really interesting. But this is my go-to. You can see I've pitted the center of this because this is what I use for the blacks of the eyes. And generally using a tiny brush so the center gets kind of pitted. But this color is great for shadowing. In fact, when we get to that, all of the shadow colors are made with neutral tint. So the shadows on the fur are going to have different temperatures based on where they are on the cat. All of these are neutral tint. So it's just such a versatile color. But I'm just going to go ahead and start seeing if it'll look good. I'm going to go ahead and go all the way up here. This brush is just an inexpensive Hobby Lobby brush, synthetic, and I don't know, I picked it up and tried it out, and I just can't. It's just easy to use and cheap, and I'm not worried about ruining it. So when you find a brush that's just kind of a good workhorse, you know. Okay, I'm kind of wanting to mix a little green with that, just give us some color there. The eyes are where I spend the most time, because the eyes are just my centerpiece of my painting. So we always start there. We spend the most time there. I obsess the most over the eyes. And then from there we get looser and looser as we go. But the eyes are just the most fun, in my opinion. At the end of the day, it's just shapes. If you tell yourself, oh, it's an eye, it's round, or it's this or that, it often becomes a distraction. But if you just say, I'm painting shapes, little shapes within the eye, then right now it kind of looks like fall leaves or something. So before I do anything else to the eye, I am going to go ahead and do this black center. And because sometimes I can't really tell where I'm at till I do the dark parts. I'm like, they just bring it all together. Beautiful. Yeah, this neutral tint stick is just my favorite because I can just have it right here. I have it in my palette too, but this has ended up. I didn't like the sticks when I first tried them. I was like, it's not really for me. And then I found myself just like using it all the time, and I'm like, no, maybe I like them. Maybe I just do. So what I'm doing is going in on dry paper, and a lot of people that makes them nervous because it's like, oh no, what if the edges dry hard? I don't even worry about it. I always go back in and soften, and I have techniques to help if it goes, dries too fast or whatever. I'd much rather have the control, in regards to the eyes anyway, of going in on dry paper. And then this is all dark. Yeah, I remember sending you the paper because I remembered your address was in Hawaii, and I thought that was so cool. But I always throw my dot card in with paper, and I must have just don't know things. So, well, a couple weeks ago, I sent 2 dot cards out in the same morning, and I always write a note. And one person was named Mark, and one person was named Lisa, And Lisa got Mark's and Mark got Lisa's. And I got a message from Mark and he's like, I don't know who Lisa is, but thank you for the dot card. And I was like, oh my goodness. It's been a week.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been very busy.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good thing.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, okay. Ooh, ooh, I love it when it starts to kind of pop out. So right now it's a pretty boring thin line. And so it's not a hard line if you look at the reference. It's blending into the eye. So what I'm going to do is take a clean stiff brush. It's damp. And I'm just going to finesse that edge. Make sure it's not too wet. Water control is important. I like to have a cloth right here to dab this on. Constantly dabbing my brush to make sure I don't have too much water. But yeah, this is just such a great way to kind of soften edges. I will drag that paint up just a little bit. And that's where these like inexpensive, what are they called? Synthetic brushes come in handy, really. Is when you need to do a little scrubbing. So, I'm going to take some more of that.
Synthetic brushes are usually a little firmer
Yeah.
than... Yeah, okay.
Yeah, absolutely. They're definitely firmer. And each brush I think has its place. I really like the silver black velvets because they force me to be less controlling.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's circumstances where I need something that's stiff. So I don't stick to really one. Oh, I'm loving it. I'm loving how this is looking. So I'm going to mix up some more of that green because I'm almost out, as you can see. So I've got, actually that's nickel azo yellow, which is really a bossy color. But it makes the most beautiful greens mixed with ultramarine. So most of the colors I'm using today, like I said, are on my dot card. So when you get that, or if you have colors that are similar, then you can try those out and see how you like them. Okay, so what I'm doing here is creating that like texture, and then I'll soften it here in a second. But I'm just kind of having some fun. And then I'll take my brush, I'll clean it, and then I'm going to mess those lines up. I don't want them perfect. I'm just going to dab them, mess them up. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you saw, I had emailed you earlier. I said, hey, you're the only person today. You got me all to yourself. And some people would, yeah, some people would love it. Other people get uncomfortable. There's a lot of people who just want to sit in the background, and that's totally cool. Like, I'm an introvert. You wouldn't know it, but I really am an introvert, and so I get it. So I emailed you, and I was like, hey, do you want to, like, are you okay with being the only person? Because some people might not. But I'm glad it worked out. Yeah, it'll probably take me till tomorrow to get it uploaded because, oh man, these end up being pretty big files and they take forever to upload. But yeah, we'll get it up there, and it's so nice to be able to watch live, ask questions, and then be able to go at your own pace as well. It's kind of like the best of both worlds. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to look at my reference, which I've got on my iPad in front of me, and I'm going to squint at that, and it's not the depth I want just yet. I think we're going to do one more layer. So if you keep trying to add paint while it's wet, sometimes you just end up lifting. Your brush ends up pulling up paint, and so it's good to just give it a dry and then go in again. And right now I'm really just playing around with mixing. I love mixing. So So we've got our green mixture here, our burnt sienna color here, and just using those to get the depth that I need. Something I am noticing too on the reference, and these kind of things aren't super important, but they can like make a huge difference. There's a blue streak between these highlights. And often the highlight of the eye is reflecting the sky. And so that's why I've got King's Royal Blue on my dot card. Literally the only reason that's on there. You can use ultramarine as well, watered down. But which I am going to use ultramarine right now for that little blue streak. It does make a difference. If you're looking for a photorealistic eye, then you want to make sure that you're achieving all the little nuances within the eye. And this, like I said, I really only fuss when I'm doing the eyes. I don't make sure it's not too intense. And then I'll soften it out because it's a little too hard, because it really is just a blush of blue. Okay. And we'll probably have to add some opaque white anyway, but I think it's doing good. Now we need to do this kind of fleshy pink area, and for that I love Potter's Pink. It's just the best. Bloodshot eyes, the little pink cornea in the eye. I'm going in on dry paper. As long as the black around it is dry, I can go ahead and just add this. And then I'll have to darken it because it's in shadow. Alright. So I'll do one more. And this time, rather than just putting it everywhere, I'm looking at my reference and I'm seeing where is it the darkest? And then is it streaky? What is the texture like? And then that's adding it. And then I'm also going to grab some neutral tint and I'm going to let that mix and mingle just based on what the reference is doing. I wiped my brush off. I didn't wash it. I just kind of wiped it on my towel to get rid of some pigment. Yeah. Piemontite Genuine's great for, you know, the pinky, fleshy things. It's great for tongues. But anyway, yeah, it's so awesome. Soak up some of that. Okay, I'm just looking at my reference, and I'm going to take some burnt umber and put it on here, and I'm going to use that just right here. I just want to darken these little areas. They're not getting dark enough. And then this is where I use my finger a little bit to just mess it up. That's why I say, put paint down, mess it up. Intentionally messy. I like to tell people, pretend you are in kindergarten. We'll get there. Right now we're being very, very precise and very particular because it's the eyes. But we're going to get a little bit more crazy because you'll see. I'm going to show you this is just my kind of quick one. The eyes I spent the most time on. And then look at the ears. Look at that lovely mess. Look at that lovely mess. I don't focus too much. I just get the basic lights and darks and the color, and we just let the ears be wild. Okay, by the way, these little dishes I just got these like 2 weeks ago. They're just Hobby Lobby again. I'm always there, but they're like little condiment dishes that came in a 6-pack. And to say I'm obsessed with them would be an understatement. But they're just so amazing for mixing up little... I've found myself having a hard time mixing up enough of a color on my flat palette. And so these have just been perfect. Okay. Yeah, they're great. I bet Home Goods, Walmart, all the different anywhere we're, I like to shop in the different departments of stores and see what I can find for my studio that's not meant for my studio. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead. Usually I do both eyes first and I get them done. But for the sake of time, I am going to move on to step 2, which is the nose. But I will finish in the recording. I will finish both eyes. This eye is in shadow, and so it is a little bit different than painting this eye, just for the fact that it's darker. But I will just, while you're here, I want to be able to show you in person if you have any questions. Okay, this cute little nose. To make this orange color, I mixed 2 colors that are non-granulating and they are transparent. So that would be quinacridone red, which is more of a magenta. Really is not red at all. It is like magenta. And then nickel azo yellow. You could do quin gold. That would be really pretty. And that's going to give us kind of the orange color for the nose and the ears. It's really intense right now. Really, really, really intense. We'll dull it down just a little bit. I'll grab some of this brown that I have here and we'll make a little bit duller of an orange. And then I want to pay attention to the fact that there is a highlight on the nose that I don't want to lose. So I literally just washed my brush, but I left the tiniest bit of pigment in it. So let me show you. It's what I call dirty water. Dirty water is where you can see there is just the littlest bit of pigment in there, but it's mostly water. So I did this. I dipped it in my water, swirled it around, pulled it out, and we still have just a little bit. And that's, if I need a highlight that has just a little bit of tint, that's what I will use. Dirty water. Use it all the time for the whites of eyes or shadows on white fur, things like that. Oh, teeth. When a dog is smiling and their teeth are showing, that kind of thing. So what I'll do is create a wet and wet situation with my dirty water. I say that with quotations. And then once it's wet, now I can grab my darker pigment and start adding it here and there. Now this is tricky just based on how wet things are. So you just have to pay attention to the wetness level. You can tell by looking from the side if the paper's still wet. Mine is already drying. It's a little warm in my room today. I had my little heater on and I think I went too far and it got a little hot in here. It's starting to cool down where I live. And I am a lizard. I'm always cold. Okay, so basically I took this like hot, I don't know what to call it, orange color, and just dulled it down just a little bit. What I had going on in here was my burnt umber and my burnt sienna kind of thing. So if anytime you have a pink or a red and you want to dull it down or give it a little bit more of an earthy quality, just throw some burnt umber with it and oh, it's perfect. Like if you have a pink tongue and it's not quite like pink, but it's pink and you want to just dull it down and calm it down, burnt umber. You just have to keep in mind that that is a granulating color. So if you don't want granulation, then that's what you do. Okay, so what I just did was I cleaned off my brush. I didn't clean it. I just wiped it on my towel. And I used it like a sponge because I noticed there's a little highlight right here. And I'm using it to suck up some of that paint I just put down. So you can lift while paint is wet. And down here doesn't matter. There's going to be black anyway, but we'll just go ahead and soften this edge right here. This little edge needs softened. Just using a damp brush to finesse it. And softening. I try to avoid any kind of scrubbing like this with my silver black velvets just because I destroyed my very first one by digging at my paint wells and scrubbing too much, you know? But we live and we learn. And we spend way too much money. I've learned that. Oh. Okay, so I'm trying to maintain that just little cute highlight there on the side of the nose. I don't want to lose it. You can keep a clean paper towel to the side if you need to grab any pigment off there. So that's pretty good. Now, what you're seeing on the camera, at least what I'm seeing on Zoom, it looks way redder than what I'm seeing in person. So keep in mind there's some sort of translation happening. So as you're painting, trust your own judgment. Like if what you're seeing on camera just doesn't feel right to you, then trust that, because that it does get lost in translation just a little bit with the cameras and everything. But yeah, what I'm seeing here matches the reference photo that I have really well. And I also think things are a little oversaturated on the Zoom, so we'll just have to take it with a grain of salt. And then I'm going in again. This side's pretty dark because it's in shadow. So adding a little brown is perfect for this area. Okay, I'm liking it. Because it's easier to layer black on top of a lighter value color than it is the other way around. In fact, it would not look good if we did the black first, because you run the risk of that pigment lifting and spreading and becoming kind of a mess. So I always do the colors. I always start with the lightest value in the eyes and the nose, and then I'll do black. Not always, though, for dog noses, so that's another thing. Sometimes I go straight in with black first, but most dog noses are black or brown, so it's different. Kitty noses, these little pink noses, we don't want to do that. Okay, so once I've got my base color down, I can start adding those darker colors, and that's where our neutral tint comes in. Now, like I said, neutral tint can be more leaning violet. And so what I do is I add burnt umber to it. You can add any brown, really. You could add any brown, really. Now, Van Dyke brown, if you need a dark chocolatey brown, Van Dyke brown is on here. But I can make that as well with the neutral tint and some burnt umber. I'm essentially warming up the neutral tint. I don't want it to look too purple on this cute little nose, but right now it's just a good neutral black color, and I think it's going to work really well. And this brush is too small. Well, I'm going to move up to a bigger brush. So now I'm going to start down here at the bottom. I didn't draw in where the markings go. If I was doing a pet portrait for a customer, or if I was doing my own precious, cat or something, I might lightly pencil in the markings just so that I can get them right. But where I'm right now, this is just teaching purposes and whatnot. I didn't worry about it. I'm trying to simplify so that I think sometimes when we're learning, we really just need things simplified a little bit. So I'm just going to dab in some of that black. Now, it is not a hard edge, so I'm going to hurry before it dries. I'm going to take my brush, I'm going to clean it, I'm going to dab it on my towel. I'm just going to soften that just a little bit. I don't want a super hard edge, but we also don't want too much water because then it starts to bleed around, and we don't want that either. Not on the nose. And then over here, all of this is in shadow. And we'll soften this too. Right now I'm just putting it down. I'm putting pigment on paper, and then we'll decide what we're going to do with it. Sometimes it can be tricky on a reference photo where things are in shadow. It really can be tricky to know where things go. You can zoom in on it if you have it on your iPad or your phone. You can kind of do that. You can even edit it and brighten it up. Maybe not the one you're working from, but have a second copy that you can brighten up the shadows if you really want to know where things go. But I try not to worry too much about it. Just want to make sure we got the values where they go, and the markings too. Those are important. Okay, so now on the top of the nose where the fur is, we've got like this kind of black area. So what I did was I'm dabbling on dry paper, and then I'm cleaning my brush, and I'm going to come in here and just kind of let that mingle. I have a little more water than I usually do, and so I'll just fuzz that out a little bit. And then if it's too hard of an edge, even just adding a little bit more can help that. Yep, and we can even use our finger to kind of help that to look a little more organic. Okay, I'm cleaning my brush, and I'm just gonna come in and there. I think that's fine. And then I'm dabbling water on the top of it to let the pigments play a little bit more. Okay, so now down here, this nose indents, and the way that you show that something is behind something or indenting a little bit is you need to darken the area around it. So let's grab the color we're going to use for the blonde. So I'm going to clean this one off. I don't need this one anymore. I have 6 of these little bowls, and I think I need more. Okay, so I'm using raw sienna. It's a color I've been exploring, and I've been kind of using it in place of yellow ochre here and there, but it is a little more reddish than yellow ochre. So it's perfect for the little ginger areas on this cat. But at home, if you don't have this color, you can mix yellow ochre, French ochre, any ochre-y type color. Just add a little bit of burnt sienna or like something reddish to it, and it will give you that. So what I'll do is I'm going to use that because that's what I'm seeing over here. And I'm not going to be too obsessive about it. Also, make sure the nose is dry before you start doing this, because obviously we just don't want the paint to start mingling. Water's funny, isn't it? Water droplets just want to be together. So if you let 2 water droplets touch, they're going to want to be friends. And we don't want that if we've got different colors going on. That was my biggest frustration when I first started watercolor. Is I was like, what am I doing wrong? Like everything is just bleeding together. It's a big mess. And then I don't remember, somebody said, hey, you gotta dry and you gotta layer. I was like, oh, okay, layering. Okay, so while I'm here, I might as well just do this whole, there's this cute ginger spot here, and I'm just gonna eyeball it. It does kind of come right here. I'm just going to eyeball it, and I am doing it on dry paper. I will soften it. Oh, this kitty is so cute. Okay, so now that that's down, I am going to clean my brush. You can let cauliflowers happen too, especially on fur. So I'm dropping in clean water, and then I'm also going to take the tip of my brush and I'm going to kind of tickle that edge just a little bit to let things play. We don't want a hard edge here because this is fur, and fur often does not have that kind of a hard edge. So we will play. Sometimes I'll even stick my brush up and down like this and just use just barely the end of it. I'll use my finger. This watercolor, we want it to look playful and fresh and fun. And so we do not want to try to be too perfect, especially when it comes to something organic like fur. Now there's a couple dots that are darker, so I'm going to grab some actual burnt sienna, and while it's wet, I'm going to add those dots. They will dry so much darker than it looks right now. And then this, I'll even take some of that burnt sienna and do some more shadowing. Isn't that the biggest like frustration about watercolor, is how it dries so much lighter? Every time I'm like, oh yeah, that should be dark enough, and then 5 layers later, it's just how it goes. I've started to be a little more brave about putting down darker paint as I've gone on, but I still hesitate. Okay, so I generally do a 5-step pet portrait. So the 5 steps, have already done the eyes. Those are step 1. Step 2 is the nose, and the nose includes the surrounding area. Muzzle, lips, if it's an animal with their mouth open and they're showing their tongue or their teeth, I will include like the mouth with the nose. So that is step 2. So in that vein, we're going to go ahead and do the other cute little marking. And now that one I did with burnt umber and a little bit of hematite genuine. And I mentioned it before when we barely first started. Hematite genuine. I really can't give you a replacement if you don't have it. It just gives me this texture. I mean, look at this. This is burnt umber and hematite genuine. And it really helps you achieve fur textures so that you don't have to paint every single hair. The granulation, the pigment, the paper, all of those are doing it for you. So I'm mixing burnt umber and hematite right here. And that's what I'm going to use here. But at home, you could definitely use burnt umber, add a little bit of Payne's Gray, add a little bit of something that is going to kind of dull it down a little bit. Try to find something that does have some granulation. But I tell you, hematite, man, is magic.
Ashley, I gotta go.
Yeah, you're good. Hey, thanks for hanging out.
Thank you.
I will email you as soon as the replay is up.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay,
Looking forward to it.
thanks,
Thank
Denise.
you.
Take care.
All right.
Bye.
You too.
Okay, so I'm continuing with that hematite and burnt umber, and I'm adding it here on the side of the nose. I think I went a little higher up than I needed to. It's totally fine. Totally fine. Okay, I'm going to grab some water and just let things play a little bit. Okay, I'm just squinting at my reference because I need to know how far this marking goes, and it goes quite a bit further than I was thinking. In fact, this brush is probably on the small side. There's a little white thing here. And then I need some of this because this is definitely here. Come in! And now I'm just softening. Once again, I like the lost and found edges look. And so what that means for me is that some edges I'm going to soften and some I'm going to leave hard. That is optional to you. You can soften all of the edges if you prefer. But it is fun to at least experiment and see what you like. See what works for you. And then over here, we actually have a shadow. And so while that's all wet, I'm going to go ahead and add the shadowing. And that's neutral tint. It's a little too dark. I'm going to go ahead and actually lift some of that back up. Now for the lips, I mixed some neutral tint with this red because what I'm going to do is, it is a little on the pinkish side, and I'm going to just dot that in. Oh, this baby's so sweet. I love this kitty. So like I said, dry paint on dry paper. So wet paint, dry paper. Love that. But always soften. And then once you've softened it and added water, then you're free to go in and add wet on wet. Right? So it's a little bit of both worlds. This, when I was doing my preliminary, this kept drying way too light. And so I'm going to go ahead and do it darker. And it does go down further on this side just because of the lighting. Cute baby. So I have a cat that looks a lot like this one. Her name is Mama Kitty. Actually, her name is Ember, but she had babies right after we got her. And ever since, she's been Mama Kitty. And she's the best cat in the world. She just catches all the mice on our little property. We've got a couple acres in Idaho, and she's the best. She's very sweet. Not like our other cat, who's kind of a stinker. And Mama Kitty got hit by a car a couple years ago. Or something. That's all I could figure is she got hit by a car. And she is actually missing all but 3 teeth. And yet, she still catches mice. That is how cool Mama Kitty is. Now, like I said, to show that this nose is indented, we've got to add shadowing. And we just have to. I probably shouldn't have done black right there. It should have just been brown. This side's okay though. So we'll just add more of this. And I'm going to dabble a little bit of this in. And then we even have, this whole area is just darker. I'll use black though. I'll use neutral tint. And when I say black, just know that I'm referring to neutral tint. Because that's what I use for black. This is so cute. She's just cute. Alright. I feel like I want to just darken just a little more. That is really intense. Let me grab some burnt umber instead. Oh, I like it. Okay, I always do the bridge just a little bit too. And I like to work in sections. It helps me avoid the ugly phase. It helps me stay kind of anchored to my painting and I don't go too far. So I'm going to go ahead and just do a little bit with the bridge. Now this is where we start getting into shadows and the temperature of shadows. This is really important to know, especially when you're painting a white animal. So here we go. I'm going to use the eyedropper tool. I've got this in Procreate, not necessary. You can use Canva, you can use Photoshop, you can use any program that allows you to use an eyedropper will kind of help you to know A, temperature, and B, the depth. Look how dark that is there. And it's like this beige color. It's like a purpley shadow, okay? So now, to show fur, look at that. That is so warm. That is white fur. So we need to create these shadows. And it's going to depend on the lighting, whether the shadow is cool or warm. Now this is important because it helps to create color harmony and show light and luminosity. So this shadow under the eye is that. But right now, I really just want to focus on the nose. And so let's look at the circle, the disc. So it lies in basically a reddish brown section. So I'm going to create a shadow color using neutral tint and burnt sienna. And we'll use that for the shadowing on the bridge of the nose. I love mixing. Especially whites and stuff. Now this is where you don't need to worry about it. I've got like a size 10 brush. I'm not worried about being super detailed. It is a good idea to have a sketchbook nearby. Here I've got some strips of paper from when I was making a sketchbook. And so I'm just going to hold that here to use to test my colors. So I've got neutral tint here. It's kind of got some other things in it. I'm going to go ahead and just clean it out. You can just use it or clean it out. So I'm going to grab some burnt umber. And we don't want a lot. This is a dirty water situation. So I'm going to grab some neutral tint. And we're going to create a warm gray. Now that's really dark. Look how dark that is. Do we need it that dark? No. So let's wash our brush, but not all the way. Now what do we have? Oh, it's perfect. It's perfect. So wash your brush, but don't wash it all the way. And it gives you dirty water. So now I get to go, okay, what parts of the nose? And then I start to create where the shadows are. White fur is never just white. I mean, there's going to be parts of it that are definitely like the white of the paper. Now I'm going to be careful not to go too high. But while I'm here, I might as well do a little bit of the bridge of the nose. So I'm using the tip of my brush to indicate fur. You want to go in the direction of the fur. And this is why it's important to have a brush that comes to a fine point. Like these silver brushes are amazing. I keep trying to see if they'll let me be like an affiliate or an ambassador, but no such luck. That's okay. Now I've put that paint on dry paper, but I don't want too many hard edges. Maybe some will be okay, but I don't want too many. So I'm going to go ahead and on this side, so this is hair that's sticking up and it's got light landing on it. So behind it, let's add shadow. So I'm going to soften the stuff. Just important to soften edges. Mess it up, mess it up. Just using the tip of the brush. Like I said, it's going to dry a lot lighter than it is right now. I'm going to go ahead and do this stripe. This is not a stripe, it's a shadow that runs down the forehead. Look at the reference photo and you can easily see it. I'll just drag that down there. And remember, hairs. We are actually putting in the shadow that goes between the hairs. Now, when you're working on wet paper, we get something called fireworks. So what that means is, okay, so let's say you're doing some wet and wet. Get rid of some of that water. Can you see that that is shiny? Let's show you. Shiny. Now let's say I want to do the same thing I did here. Sorry, I need to soften this before it dries. That was really rough on my brush. So let's say you're going to add hair. I'm going to grab a little brush and I want to do like hair texture. I'm going to use dark just to demonstrate my point. When you start in the dry and go into the wet, you get something called fireworks. It's not happening right now because the paper's not too wet. But if the paper's any wetter, when you lift your brush, you won't get a soft hair. You'll get something called fireworks. So let me demonstrate. See that at the end? So what you want to do is actually start in the wet and go that way. So that, see that? Because at the tail end of it, when you drag it, you get a little firework at the end. So it's just something to note. Now, right now, this looks like a mess, and that's why I'm not going to go any further. Because I will go, oh no, I ruined it. But I am going to sprinkle some water on that just to mess it up a little bit. When that dries, it's not going to be as obvious. And when we're completely done, now I'm looking at the nose, and I need a little more contrast, or it's not going to look quite right. We'll grab some burnt umber and mix it. Is that dry? I can't do this if anything is wet because it'll bleed. So I'm just going to gently dab up some of that water I splashed. And I'm going to put this burnt umber mixture here. And what that'll do is it pops the nose forward. Anytime you want something to look 3D and come forward, you got to darken the area around it. Okay, and then soften. That helped a lot. That really helped a lot. Now let's go in and add and darken the little line down the nose because it is definitely not dark enough, but I want to mix it with some brown. I don't want it to be stark black. And this is where you got to be careful not to have it too thick. And then the black is going to dry lighter as well, so this is a good opportunity to darken anything that needs darkening. And soften. Remember to clean your brush and dab it on your cloth or your paper towel before you soften. Okay, that's always good, and make sure there's no water droplet on it. I'm actually really loving this so far. Truly, truly am. As I see the eye, I keep seeing that can be darkened. This whole, whoa, 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 whoa. So you guys know that I just splashed water on my whole paper and forgot about it. And so now things are... Man, look at that eye. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I do want to play with that highlight for a second because it's not stark enough. You need contrast. So I'm going to use this. This is, I mentioned it before, but it comes like a paste. So when you buy it, you might think that it's dried up. It's not. It's water-based. Just add a little water. I use the lid as a palette. You can water it down. Try not to water it down too much because you want that opacity. But the cool part is that it is water soluble. Okay, so now I'm going to use that to just intensify the highlights here just a little bit. And then up here, and I'm going to add there and there. Okay, that looks cool. Maybe the area around the highlight could stand to be darker. That is what will make, when you've got that contrast, it makes things pop. Okay, I'm actually going to add a little more black to the eye. Because I'm just realizing this all needs to be darker. Way darker. All of this. Oh, that was a mistake. I can lift it. That was a mistake because this area on the eye is light. So what I'm going to do is just gently scrub at that. And I'm going to try not to touch the paper towel to any other area that I just did. Mistakes happen. They happen in every single painting that I do. And the key is first to understand that all artists make mistakes, first off. Because if you were to walk around with a belief that some artists are perfect, that would be incredibly discouraging, right? So remember, we're all learning. We're all on our journey to becoming better artists. But mistakes happen, especially like for me, in almost every single painting, mistakes are made. And the cool part is, I know how to fix them because I've done it so much. Here I'm just creating some textures because this eye is epic and I want to make sure I'm reflecting that. So I'm going to add more depth. I think I need to paint over this part of it. Okay, yes, yes, yes. Okay, and then now I'm going to take my opaque white and my little guy, my little brush. The cool thing is you can't really spill that. Okay. That actually looks a lot better. In my opinion, what do you think? Oh, it looks real. When I look at it in person, I'm like, yeah, it's fine. But when I see it on camera, it looks cool. It's really cool. So, I am super happy with that eye. Okay, so once we feel like the nose and muzzle are done, then we move on to step 3, which is the ears. And just like with the eyes, we're going to start with the left ear just so that we don't, start with the right one and then smudge things as we go over. It doesn't happen a lot. It's just a system I've created. So for the ear, I'm going to use my largest brush because I have, like I said, my paper is pretty big. So I can get away with a size 12 or even larger. When I start getting into larger areas, I like to even maybe use something like this. So this is like a Korean, like a writing brush, like a calligraphy brush. This is my Silver Black Velvet size 12. So you can see the difference. And the reason I like this for when I'm trying to loosen up is because it really forces me to loosen up. So you do not need a brush this big, but I just want to demonstrate to you how that can be effective. So for the ear, we're going to start with the lightest value colors that we see on the ear, which is pink. So we've got our mixture here that we did for the nose. I'm going to add just a little more. So you could use yellow and magenta for this, or quin red, which is what I'm using. Add just a little bit of yellow. Now I'm going to need to water this down quite a bit because the ears aren't that bright. So we can test it and kind of see how bright it is. And if we need a little more pink, that's great. I think that'll work beautifully. And I'm going in on dry paper. I'm just going to start. I'm using my brush in a specific direction because there's hairs right here and the pink is behind the hairs. So I'm just trying to make sure I achieve that look. And this is where we can get like fun and splashy. And you know what, while that's there, I'm just gonna go ahead and go do the other ear. You want to keep in mind that this ear, the right ear, is in shadow. It's going to be significantly darker in value, which means we could add a little burnt umber down here. I know that looks weird right now, but it will not look weird for long. Okay, so now that that's all down, I'm going to take a clean, damp brush and make sure I don't get hard edges. I don't want to do too much of this. Remember lost and found edges, right? So that just means gentle, use a gentle touch, and you don't want to smooth everything out, right? Because then you're getting rid of that, I don't know how to explain it, like that beautiful dance between the hard edges and the precision and then the playfulness of it. I'm also intentionally leaving white of the paper here and there. It's actually something new I've been doing and I really enjoy the way that it looks. That is completely personal choice, so you can choose to leave a little bit of white or you can cover it completely. Like I said, I'm always in the process of seeing how much looser I can get. So I'm not going to fuss with it. Sorry about you couldn't see that ear. I just realized because of the reference photo. Now that those are down, I'm going to do my little splashing technique. I just love the effect you get with this, especially for ears. Now, if you start to get drips where you don't want, just have your paper towel handy so you can grab that or let it drip. Either way. I'm going to go ahead and let that dry naturally. When I do my splashes of water, I don't want to use my heat tool because I want that to dry naturally. So now I'm going to go over to, while those are drying, let's work on let's work on old righty here because I want to get this other eye done. It just feels so weird to me to have it not done. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm thinking my size 8 brush should do. And I've got my blue green here. Add a little more liquid sunshine, aka Quinn Gold. Now, like I said, this eye is in shadow, so I can use a little bit of a darker color. I am going to go ahead and start with the Quinn Gold first, though. And I'm just dabbing it in, and then I'll kind of go over it with a damp brush. So now my brush is clean. It's damp. It's actually pretty wet. And I'm essentially just wetting the entire eye. I'm avoiding the highlight and the pupil. And then while that's drying, you can even do tiny droplets of water just to add some textural variation if you'd like. And you can let it dry naturally or go ahead and make it dry like I am going to. Okay, so the eye here is not all the way dry. I just realized the way to know is if the paper's still shiny. So obviously right here you can see it's still shiny, it's still wet. You can't really see the shine on this one like I can, but when I look much better. So I'm actually gonna grab this little synthetic brush, and I'm gonna go ahead and over here where the pupil is, I'm gonna try to create this darker circle in green. Now I'm not being perfect with my brush. I'm not being smooth. We want to avoid that. We're trying to loosen up, at least I am. And I'm sure if you're here, you're wanting to try to paint in my style. So that is how I'm choosing to do this. And this eye has like this funny like vein thing right here. So I'm going to make that. And then I'm just going to outline the eye with this green color that I've created. We're going to avoid the highlight. And now I'm going to drop. I'm going to start doing a little wet and wet. Dropping in some color. Now I'm going to take, you can use your finger or your brush and use it kind of like a stamp. And now I'm going to get my brush and clean it and add a little water. I'm going to let it be a little bit drippy, not too bad. You don't want water flowing all over the place. So knowing how to control water is something that just kind of comes with time and experience. I've said it before, but it is something that you need to be conscientious of how much water is in my brush. Keeping in mind also that different brushes are going to behave differently and they're going to hold different amounts of water. Okay, I feel like I'm losing that gold tone, so I'm going to grab some burnt sienna and Quinn Gold mixture and just start kind of letting that mix and mingle just for some interest. Yeah, obviously on this eye we're going to need to go quite a bit darker. Alright, now that the ears are mostly dry, I'm going to finish drying them. And we'll come back to that eye. Okay, went ahead and dried everything. So the eye does have a little puddle here at the bottom. I'm not too worried about it. But let's just take a second and look at this eye. Let's examine this eye. So remember, we can look at our black and white to see how dark it is. You see how dark that eye is? There's not a lot going on there. But also, let's look at the color. That's almost black right there at the top. My brain was saying green, but when you hold down the eyedropper, you got some really deep dark colors going on here, especially here. So I'm not going to be afraid to go ahead and start darkening like crazy. So I'm going to grab some burnt umber. I don't want too much water on my brush. Okay, and grab some more of that green. Okay, over here, well, let's see, I've got my neutral tint and brown mixture here. So I'm going to utilize this space to make up some neutral tint. You can see the difference between the neutral tint and burnt umber mixture and just plain neutral tint. This is a lot cooler and this is a lot warmer. So I'm going to go with the warm in the eye, and yes, the eye is still wet, so this is good because the black will kind of be soft. Now this whole eye is lined in black, not the eyeliner, but like the eyeball itself, because it is in shadow. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up. Now remember to just be constantly looking at your reference. It's vital to be always glancing back and forth. That makes a huge difference. But that line still isn't as soft as I would prefer. So I'm going to help it just a little. And this is a delicate process because I don't want to be heavy-handed and end up lifting the paint beneath. So I'm just using the tip of my brush to kind of soften that out. Okay, I feel safe to go ahead and add the pupil, even though I feel like it's not quite the value that we need it to be. And it's okay if we don't exactly match the value of the original picture, especially if you're concerned about losing details, then, you know, maybe you don't need to worry as much. And I'm also darkening just here. And I will always make sure that your brush doesn't have any drips on the ferrule, this part here. I always just tap that to my cloth. It's part of my water control. And I'm gonna grab a little burnt umber and make that veiny thing that's running through the eye. And then I'm also just dabbing in a little more depth here. Grab some green. And you can make lines if you want. It adds to the interest for sure. Wow. Yeah, and I did kind of lose the highlight. I'll have to go back in and kind of tweak that, but that's nothing new. Okay, let's add that fleshy inner eye area. And then on this side, it is really dark. Like almost black. So I'm going to play around with a little Piemontite Genuine for that. It's just slightly darker than the Potter's Pink. It's a lot deeper in mass tone value. That definitely is not dark enough. I'm going to go ahead and add a little neutral tint. And to see that wet on wet I just did. Okay, I'm going to take a little more neutral tint, and I'm going to just yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. I don't want to lose the interest. If I were to go any darker on that eye, it's going to fall flat. So I'm thinking I'll just leave it as it is, and we'll go back to the ear. I'll get rid of the green there. Now we are going to get back into our earth tone territory as we start doing more fur. So I'm gonna grab this Big Daddy again, this size 12, and I need to get some more mixture here. This is dried. So this is the hematite burnt umber mixture. We'll be using this a lot on the fur. Now this is kind of a dance to figure out how dark it needs to be, how much brown it needs to have. And when you first lay it down, it's going to look different than as it dries, because those hematite pigments need a minute to separate, and you can help it by adding water droplets. But after it dries, it starts to look a little more like that. You can see those black pigments, how they kind of settled into the texture of the paper. I'm just going to use the tip of my brush to do the ear. So I'm going to go along this edge because that's kind of a hard edge, and we can soften it a little bit. But I'm going to do that. And then I'm going to either grab a different brush or clean your brush. If you don't want to lose the pigment we just made, then grab a different brush that's damp. And I'm going to use that to kind of soften this edge here. And then also we can create some interest up here by softening, just selectively softening an edge. We'll definitely need more. So if you want, while it's wet, you can drop in a little more pigment. This process is kind of tricky because if you don't have enough water in your brush or pigment and water in your brush, you end up sucking up pigment rather than putting pigment down. So just keep that in mind. Now I'm going to go along this area here. This for me is kind of part of the ears, just the area right below. Now right here I've left white because if you look, the hairs are kind of lighter, so I'll just use the tip of my brush to kind of play around right there. And then you can add some water droplets for interest. I love cauliflowering. Blooms, blossoms, cauliflowers, whatever you call them. And then this edge here is a little bit more dark, so I'll just go ahead and add just a little bit. And then, like I said, once you put down pigment, paint, mess it up. And then if you don't want hard edges here, just grab a brush and kind of soften. Okay, I'm going to mix up some more of that ginger color using our raw sienna. It's not really mixing, I'm just using the stick to put some in here. You can actually work directly from a stick. You don't need to put it in a palette or anything. That's the beauty of it. But I want to mix up a good puddle of it. You could even do this. Dip it in your water just a little bit. Got a lot of like really concentrated pigment there. That should be enough. Add a little bit of water. And I'm going to mix up more of this. We are going to need a lot of it. Now if you're working fresh from the tube, these little pots would be so ideal. And you could just add a little water and get a nice big puddle of paint. I don't enjoy working straight from the tube because for me, I'm so used to working with paint that's been dried down that the intensity of the fresh paint usually ends up overwhelming my painting just because I'm not used to it. But some artists really enjoy working straight from the tube. So it's just up to you what you want to do. It's the beauty of art. We all get to do what we enjoy. Now I did accidentally splatter here. I don't mind too much if I have a little splattery. So I just don't want it on the white part as much. And we're going to make some intentional splatters, but I'm literally, I dipped this in water and I'm just using it as an eraser. Works fine. See down here I've got, you probably can't see this, but I made some drips. Okay, so I've got my brown color, I've got my ginger color. I'm just trying to think ahead. I need to mix a little bit more of this blackish color because this cat does have some black. Lunar black is really great as well. for this kind of cat fur, and maybe we could pull it out. If you have lunar black, you could try. It has those beautiful granulating properties. It is not on my dot card. I did add it to this one at the bottom. I wish I would have. I just kind of thought, there were other pigments that at the time felt more important. But lunar black is great for pet portraits, especially those pebbly dog noses. Okay, so now I've got a couple things ready. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing to this ear that I did over here. And I'm remembering there's a highlight on the ear, so I'm going to avoid that. So it's kind of like this right here, comes down, and then there's a highlight there. Okay, rinse your brush, dab it on your towel, and come back over here and soften the edge, and then soften this. And you can do the selective softening. There are little white hairs here on the ear, so to give the idea of little white hairs, we can just allow that paint to mix and mingle and play. I'm going to add a little more pigment there. Okay, I need to darken the pink area, so I'm taking some burnt sienna and I mixed it with the ear color, and that's kind of giving us this beautiful deep color that we need here. And I'm just going to start adding that. Just look for the shapes that you see. And use the tip of your brush to kind of let things swirl and play to indicate hairs. And then I'm going to darken over here as well. Same color mixture. Turned out perfect. It's like this orange color. I'm just indicating some little hairs here. So we don't want to paint every hair. We want to give the idea of hair. I've said it before. It's kind of a common saying of mine that I want to give the idea of hairs. I see a lot of watercolor artists, especially my students, get really overwhelmed and distracted by every little hair, and I just want to help you avoid that trap. We don't want it to look like a colored pencil painting, right, or a drawing. We want it to look like watercolor. And watercolor is not perfect. It has all these little different nuances and things. And so let's remember that as we paint, that we're just giving the idea of hair. And I'm just darkening, and this is some of it's dry, some of it's not. Things are going to dry lighter. We've already talked about that. And you just have to keep layering till you feel like it's where you want it. And that is somewhere where working straight from the tube could come in handy, because you're going to be getting quite a bit more pigment and less water, and so it's going to darken a lot quicker. And right now I'm just softening some edges that are a little hard. I don't really want hard edges there. Okay, so we talked about the steps of a pet portrait: eyes, step 1, nose and mouth, step 2, ears, step 3, and step 4 is just the rest of the face. But within the face, we need to remember to create sections, because if you just start going, sometimes you end up getting lost. I'm speaking from experience. I end up getting lost, and I want to just focus on one section at a time. So it's up to you what section you choose. So right now I'm just going to focus on this area here. I'm going to add some of these little stripes and things, and then from there I'll choose a different section. But I'm going to go ahead and add that ginger stripe. There's just this sweet little ginger stripe here. And we'll add the black after. You could try mixing hematite with raw sienna, but it ends up turning green. So like I said, if you're going to do any mixing or anything like that, just do it on a spare piece of paper first, so you don't end up regretting it. So once I've put my paint down, what do? That's right, I mess it up. And it did leak over here a little bit. That happens if you have too much water. So what you can do is dry off your brush and do that. But here's the thing. This is all black right here. So I'm not super worried about it, but there is a white streak that comes up here. And so I want to avoid that area. I'll do opaque white for whiskers. I'll do it for the shine on the eye. But as far as fur is concerned, I want to try to avoid it because it doesn't look good when you use an opaque white on fur. It just dulls it down a little bit. Okay, I'm going to call that good for now. And I'm going to dry it. Okay, I would like to go ahead and add anything that is this ginger color to the cat before we do anything darker, because this is a kind of a lighter value. And so I'm just going to use my best judgment here to kind of just, and the tip of my brush, of course. And we're going to go all the way down here to kind of add in. Be sure to leave some whites of the paper. Because this cat has some white hairs, and the best way to give the idea of white hairs is leaving the white of the paper. Remember, the fur doesn't have to be precise, and you don't need to do every little hair we've talked about. And this little cheek patch is kind of a burnt umber color anyway. All right, so we did a little wet on dry. Now we can mess it up. So starting in the first place that you added color, there's something on my brush that I don't like. Hold on. Make sure your brush is clean when you do this. And yeah, make sure your brush is good and clean. I'm gonna flip this over. I don't know where I'm picking up dirty paint from, but it happens. And I'm not being aggressive with my brush. I'm being pretty gentle. Make sure that's dark enough, and then darken that. And now you're going to either let it dry or use your heat tool. Now, if any of your little puddles dry, you can just spritz them gently with some water to wake them back up, especially if you're taking breaks in between, like I do. I often take my paintings in multiple sessions, just depending on how much time I have to paint in any given day. Sometimes I can get it done in a couple of hours in one sitting, and sometimes it takes a couple of days or even weeks, just depending on, like I said, how much time I have to sit and work on it. Okay, so this is my Hematite Genuine and Burnt Umber mixture, and let's test it on a separate piece of paper just to make sure it's not too dark as we're going in. That's perfect. That is actually perfect. Good, good, good. Okay. So I'm going to go in right here and just start adding this, which is kind of like a mid-tone. It's our next color that we've got. And I'm doing it with the tip of the brush right here, just because this cat's got so much texture going on here. I don't want it to be perfect. And then you can actually smooth out this side of it, but don't smooth out that side where it's close to the ear. And you want to just be messy about this. Okay, I'm going to rinse my brush off and use just the tip of it to start to soften some edges. Make sure you get some lost and found edges. And also go ahead and add in some water droplets. Now, while this is wet, it would be a really good opportunity to add in your black tones in the fur. Doing it kind of wet and wet. So for my black tones, I've got my neutral tint. And they're going to mix and mingle a little bit with the burnt umber hematite mixture. So I'm not going to worry about warming it up at all because it will balance out. making sure it's kind of bumpy up there on the top of the head. We don't want that to be too perfect. I'm using my finger to kind of spread it around. All right, so we've only got just little bits here and there of this black over here. I apologize if all you're getting is the shine. See if we can lift the easel up a little so you can see it better. Okay, I'm going to use some water to do my splattering. Okay, and I'm using a brush I haven't previously used in this painting, but my Silver Black Velvet size 8 is super frayed. The end is super frayed, and so I just wanted to switch to something similar that's a little bit nicer. So this is a newer brush. I need that end to be good and pointy and sharp, and the Silver Black Velvet one I kind of destroyed it. They'll last you forever, but I got it when I first started using nicer brushes, and I wasn't very nice to it, so I kind of destroyed it. Okay, now here on the eye, look at the reference. There's no black right here, and so what I need to do is lift that back up. That was pretty easy to do. But we do have a little bit of like the hematite going on here. And that's okay to add that. And here I'm using my brush to suck up some of that pigment that's not supposed to be there. And I'm loving how messy this all looks. I've got cauliflowers and blooms and blossoms happening, and that's good. I am going to go ahead and use this tiny brush and add in some of the little stripies here. And then mess them up just a little. Now I could use hematite a little more concentrated and with less burnt umber for the black parts over here. I'm going to just do that as kind of an experiment. Rather than neutral tint, I want to take advantage of the granulation of the hematite. And so up here, I want to go ahead and use that. Now if you have too much water and pigment, if the tip of your brush isn't thin, that means you've got too much water and pigment. So, and you know what? We can even mix a little neutral tint with hematite and see what happens. Sorry, I'm off camera. Oh, I like that. Okay, before that goes too far and dries too quickly, I need to do my messing up magic. Does that mean water droplets? Does that mean softening? It could mean whatever. I just want to make sure I'm not leaving things too perfect. Now for the little stripy stripe right here, I think burnt sienna or transparent red oxide, which is what I use, would be really great. So like what I mean is right here, this little stripe. Okay, we just need to make sure that we're getting the depth and the darkness correct. So I'm going to do one more run on this. Just make sure it's dark enough. And then we'll start talking about the white for shadows. Okay, we have our two, hold on, make sure that's clean. Okay, I have two shadow colors here, a cool and a warm. And this painting has different shadow tones on it. We've already kind of talked about here. So the shadow tone on the chest is going to be a more warm shadow tone and almost has an orange undertone to it. So this is really dark, right? I don't want it that dark. So let's test it out like we always do. I usually use a sketchbook, but just for the sake of space on video, I want to make sure. So I'm going to keep adding water till I've got a dirty water shadow tone. It's going to be great. That's a nice warm shadow. So let's go ahead and do step 5, which is the body. We still have some shadows to do on the face, but I want to show you this shadow specifically. So I am going to, and I want to go in a little darker than I think it's going to need to be, because it's going to lighten up significantly. Now, because the left side of the painting is in shadow and the light is coming from the right, this shadow is only going to go this way. Okay, I'm going to wash my brush off and I'm going to selectively soften edges here and there. You might have to keep rinsing it, especially if you're picking up pigment, which that just happens when you touch your brush to the pigment. And I'm going to add a ton of water on the body. I love getting splashy. If you don't like blooms and blossoms, well, then I don't really know why you're here, because my work has kind of a splashiness to it. If you don't like that, that is totally fine. Just don't add water. Okay, so I'm going to leave that chest shadow alone, but we need to do some more face shadowing. We can darken the lip shadows, and those were a very warm, almost pinkish tone of shadow. You can add a little burnt umber or burnt sienna to get it pinkish. I'm going to darken that. And same kind of shadow tone is happening right here on the cheek. It's very warm. Now keep in mind you can make shadows with Payne's Gray and burnt umber, ultramarine and burnt umber. There's all kinds of ways that you can create shadow grays. Right here, I've got ultramarine and neutral tint for a cool shadow. This cat has so many different layers of shadow. We've got the shadow here by the eye, and that just gives, that's going to help us achieve the depth that we want. And we've got a shadow that comes down right here. So just squint at your reference photo and keep adding shadows where you think they go. It's going to feel a little bit weird, but I promise it will be good in the end. Okay, so the shadow that runs up the forehead lightened so much, so we need to add it back. Okay, there is one small shadow. Whoa, that was way too green. I added a little green and I shouldn't have done that. But there is a small shadow under the eye there. Don't add green. Don't do what I did. Okay, I don't like that, so I'm just gonna lift it back out. We do need a little dark area right here. And soften. Okay, we've got quite a shadow happening here. Because remember, this side of the face is technically in shadow quite a bit. Ooh, I'm loving the cauliflowers that I got right there. So pretty. Now, here under the chin, there's not really a lot going on. There is one small bluish shadow here that you can vaguely see. So I'm just going to add that. And you can't really see it right now because of the angle. Yeah, this is all in shadow over here. It's going to feel like you're making it dirty, but when it dries, it won't look like that. Oh, shoot. I don't know what I just did. But, like I said earlier, mistakes do happen. So let's just do the best we can. I think I dipped it in my palette. Okay. Now what I want to do is look at it and see if I need to do anything else to darken or deepen anything. And the first thing I can see that needs to happen is the ears. So this ear in particular, it just needs depth. So by darkening, we're giving a little more depth. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to make my orange ear and nose mixture, add a little burnt umber to it to kind of deepen it. Let me just test it. Oh yeah. And soften. We're just making a good old mess. And I feel like this side of the head in general needs darkened. So I'm going to use some burnt umber. And I'm going to do kind of a wash. Okay, I'm going to make some really, really dirty water. Really light dirty water for the fur of the face over here. And then also for the body over here. There's not a lot going on. I just want to add something. Okay, so one last thing I really like to do is maybe adding splatters. I'll even sometimes I'll pick colors off the painting. I really think that the color we used for the ears would be so pretty. Let me get rid of this. Start fresh. Okay, I'll make some more. I've got my yellow. I've got my pink. And I'll grab a touch of like a burnt umber or burnt sienna that's on my palette. I'm going to make some splatters, but I need to cover up the face. And it's pretty wet still. So I don't want to splatter the face. I want the splatters to be kind of down here on the side. It's kind of strategic. And then I'll even wash my brush and then splatter with just plain water. And that kind of helps it spread out. It's going to look really cute. And then while it's wet, you can even drop in a little more. And it's going to lighten up significantly. And then you can even do a little up here. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. And then anywhere that it's running away and you don't want it to, you can dab it up. If it's going on the body and you don't want it to, and you want it just kind of to the side. And then you can play with it with your finger and choose where you want it. Okay, I'm gonna let it dry now, and then we'll take a look and see if we feel like we're ready to add whiskers. Okay. So it's dry, and now it's time to kind of do an overview, and I'm looking at it and trying to decide what needs to be darker, okay? So I'm gonna grab my reference photo, and I've got the black and white version. And honestly, when you look at the black and white, you can kind of see like where the darkest areas are, and you know where your shadows are, and where your lightest areas are. And so I'm looking at, let's talk about this ear. Looking at how dark this ear is. And I think this little area right here, I'm just going to do it really quick. So let me grab some of that pink and the burnt umber. And I might have to make some more. Hold on. And I'm going to just darken it. Let's see. And then like, okay. And then I can kind of look at it and think, okay, this is definitely not dark enough at all. Because if I were to take a picture of this and turn it black and white, I know that that value is not dark enough. The eyes could probably go a little darker on the black parts around them. And then, you know, we've got some shadows here and there. I don't want to go too far, obviously. Like there's a point where it's like you're just losing contrast completely. So we don't want to worry about that too much, but I at least want to make sure things are where they should be. Okay, something I haven't talked about yet is lifting a hard edge after it's dry. And this is kind of my favorite. So I'm just going to get a fresh little paper towel ready. Now, I've got this cheap Royal & Langnickel brand synthetic stiff brushes. They're just the kind you get in the craft section. They're not really intended for watercolor, but they're stiff and they're flat, and I love them for lifting because you can really scrub. So this edge right here is bugging me, and so I don't know what is in this brush, but it's a little dirty. It's okay because we're just gonna lift anyway. So I don't like this hard edge, so you're gonna just scrub with just a little bit of water, and voila. And then anywhere else that I'm like, oh, I went too far, like this cheek, it happens. It happens to the best of us that maybe we go too far, do too much. And I don't want to do a ton of this lifting because it can flatten things quite a bit. But like right here, I want to lighten that back up. And if you've been following my tutorial, you might have gone too dark too. It's just happens. So see how that can really scrub the paper? You would not want to do this with your nice brushes. So it is lightening up a little bit. Sometimes it takes a couple goes. They do make brushes that are intended for this. They're called eradicator brushes. But why spend that kind of money when you can just grab a pack of these? They come in like a 12 pack or something of different sizes. So let's say I want to lift just a little tiny area. I can pick up a smaller size one and away I go. Okay, now in that vein, I do want to darken this just a little more. I feel like I keep having to darken it like crazy. But sometimes that's the case. So I'm going to add a little burnt umber, make a shadow color. It really is kind of like this whole area right here. And maybe I just won't soften it as much. And that's really, really dark, isn't it? So let's just chill it out a little bit. And what I'm doing right now is squinting my eyes at my reference and my painting. It's so stupid, but it's just such a good technique for being able to see what you could not see before. And apparently not everybody can squint their eyes or unfocus their eyes. My husband said he did not know what I was talking about when I told him about it. So here I am just darkening this, and then this all needs darkened. Like I said. I'm just adding what needs added. Adding a little burnt umber around this eye. And I'm getting a little creative here. And let's grab some hematite. and mess it up. Make sure to mess it up. Just a little. And right there, I just went too dark. I squinted my eyes at it and I could easily see it. So I'll just lift that. That's great. Up here on the ginger part of the top of the head, I can easily see that instead of black, I should have done burnt umber. So I'm just going to dabble in some burnt umber and then kind of play with that. Till we get to the point where we can squint at our painting and we can see it. It comes alive in front of us and we can easily see it. So this shadow, and then you can also look at the eyes, see if the pupils need darkened at all. It never hurts to darken the darkest darks one more time. Sometimes they lighten up as you go, so you just... A lot of people ask the question, how do you know when it's done? And my answer to that is I like to take a picture of it. When I think it's done, I take a picture and look at it on my phone. And for some reason, that often reveals to me quite obviously what's missing. You can even ask someone else, somebody you trust. My husband has been so amazing. I can show it to him and say, what do you think? And he'll be like, this looks like this needs to be this or that or whatever. And you can take it with a grain of salt if they're not somebody who's actually an artist, or maybe they're not seeing the reference photo and that's what you're trying to replicate. But listen, because they are the viewer, you know, even though they may not understand art, they're the viewer. And so it is good to ask for advice if you're comfortable with that. And you will grow a lot quicker being open to criticisms and advice than if you just don't. So, okay, so now what I'm doing is I've got my neutral tint here and I'm kind of just having a little fun adding a little bit more black to it and maybe even a couple of little hairs. Like just a couple here and there. You do not want to go too far with this. And always go in the direction of the hairs. So I'm just darkening the nose here. You could even add a couple of directional hairs here and there on the ears. Now this, like I said, do this so sparingly. And then you can go ahead and let it dry. Okay, once it's all dry, you can do the final touches with the opaque medium. And let's see. I bought these, they're nail brushes for doing like pinstriping on nails. And actually, they have been amazing for doing cat whiskers. They do not hold water worth you know what, but they are good for that. But what I'm going to do is get out some of the white and put it in the lid. I am going to add a dot here. And then I'm going to kind of carefully just fix up this line here. And then, like I said, this is a pinstriping brush. It's like plasticky and it does not hold any water, but it works so good for whiskers. So the best thing you can do is practice your whiskers on a separate sheet of paper before you do. I'll even do it on, if I've got something just on the side, I will practice that way. So whiskers you want to be subtle with. Really subtle. We don't want them to be the star of the show. And I'm not a huge fan of too much, but a couple here and there in strategic places can be really cute. So there's usually whiskers, and you look at your reference to know. And you're just going to go in the direction of the hair. Depending on the brush, you want to go fast or slow. This brush really lends itself to going slow. I've tried going fast with this brush and it didn't work. So when I go fast, it doesn't really put any down. And then here. And the thinner the better. That big one's probably a little thicker than I would have preferred. The nice part about this medium, though, is if it's really bad and you need to erase, you can use some water to lift. And then you'll want some whiskers down here. And it just adds such a nice little touch having some whiskers. You could even do, if you want, maybe a couple up here. I wouldn't do too much, like I said. Okay, so sometimes like on the chin, there's some itty bitty ones. You can add a couple. Just a couple. Okay, and then over here, the whiskers, see, I messed up. So here's what you do. It's really nice that this is water-based. It lifts so easily. You just have to be careful not to lift the paint underneath. But the whiskers over here are going to be kind of a grayish color. So they're going to actually show. So in order to do that, you're going to make some more dirty water. And then just dip your brush into that. So let's make a light gray. I don't even care that I have hematite in here. I just need something. These whiskers aren't going to be super obvious, but they do show a little bit. Just because they're showing up in the light. And you can go the opposite direction if you need. But like I said, just play around. Oh, that was bad. I'm going to title this workshop, Mistakes Were Made. Oh my goodness. It's just par for course. It's how it goes. Now I'm going to let it dry one more time and make my final decision if I think it's finished or not. Okay, so I'm going to call it good. I'm so happy with how this turned out. One final thing you need to do, and don't forget, is sign your painting. I always like to sign it wherever there's the most space. So I actually feel like I don't want to sign it over here. So I have my special signature. Every year I kind of do a different signature so that I know when I look at a signature, I know which year it was. So this is this year's signature. I know that that's unconventional, but it's how I roll. And then I will also put a small date underneath, usually just the year. $2024. And the final thing, the fun part, tape peel. I love the tape peel. I would not deprive you of that satisfaction. Now, normally if I'm doing a commission, I would seal this. I'm not going to talk about sealing paintings. You can find that on my YouTube channel. But I also would have it stretched properly with gummed paper tape. And so you wouldn't really get the satisfaction of the tape peel. But today, because I'm just teaching, I am doing the classic tape peel. Oh my goodness. It's not very satisfying when I can't even get a hold of it. Now you'll notice that the ears are off the edge of the painting. That is because the ears were cropped out of the photo, and that's fine. The ears are not the focal point. I will often crop a pet portrait so that the ears aren't even... Hold on. Okay, geez, I'm not even riding the struggle bus. I'm driving the struggle bus. All right. Oh my gosh, so not satisfying. So not satisfying. But you know what? You guys aren't here for a tape peel. Here to learn. This is just a bonus. So, oh my gosh. Okay, there it is. Oh, I love it. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for hanging out with me while I painted this cat. And I hope you enjoyed the process, because that's what it's all about for me. It's the process and the meditation and the taking my mind off of everything else and putting it all into this. So I would love to see your paintings when they're finished. Please email me. I would love it. If you want feedback, I'd be happy to do it. Or I would just love to see it and compliment the crap out of it, because I'm really good at that. So anyway, also, if you have any questions, email me. I'm here. And I'm also here if you want to talk over Zoom. I offer a free 20-minute consultation to talk about anything you want. So as always, thank you, and I love you, and goodbye.